Hello kids, this is Mr. Whistler with your video lesson of the day, and today we are going to be talking about Shays' Rebellion. We have one vocab word today, and it's called depression, as in economic depression. A period when economic activity slowed and unemployment increased. I can think of 3 times that our country went into depression. The first time was right after the Revolutionary War. The second time was the Panic of 1837. And the third time was the Great Depression in the 1930s. So now this is a picture of the Great Depression during the 1930s. And during the Great Depression, I think the unemployment rate got up to like 25%. So that means 1 in every 4 people did not have a job. And it was just hard for people. They did whatever it took to survive. They moved in with families, or they moved out and went out on their own, or joined the military, or did whatever it took. So they had billboards like this around. Jobless men, keep going. We can't take care of our own, meaning there's no jobs there. And you can see these guys kind of walking through town. So the 8th grade, when there are a lot of people out of work and nobody buys stuff. So this picture is also from the Great Depression. You can see that this mother doesn't look very happy, nor do her kids, and just looks like they're having a hard time. So the significance is everybody suffers because nobody has any money. All right, so after the Revolutionary War, the United States went through a depression. Rice exports decreased, trade fell when the West Indies were closed to Americans, and the government struggled to pay their war debts. It was a difficult time for farmers. Farmers could not sell their goods. They could not pay taxes to the state, which in turn was going to use the money to pay for the war. How can we pay our debts if nobody will buy our crops? Yeah, the government has not even paid me for my service. So state courts ruled against the farmers. The state took the farmers' lands to pay off their debts. And back in these days, if you didn't pay your debts, you went to debtor's prison. So some of the farmers were put into jail. How can I pay my debts if I'm in jail? Well, families were left without providers, and mothers had to beg in the streets. People started complaining and grumbling, and these grumblings soon turned into revolt. Resentment grew. Farmers viewed the new government as just another form of tyranny. So it seems to me that these farmers were comparing their new government to Britain and everything that Britain did to take away their rights. So what they really wanted, they just wanted the government to help them. They wanted the government to make new policies to help debtors instead of throwing them in jail. I know if you think about it, it's kind of harsh. I mean, a lot of these guys fought for our freedom, fought for the country, and then when they're done, they take their farms and they throw them in jail. I can see why they're mad. So in 1786, angry farmers lashed out. This guy, Daniel Shays, a former army captain, became their leader. Now some background about Shays. Shays was a captain, and he fought under Lafayette. Now, Lafayette was a French nobleman who came over because he believed in our cause and he wanted to fight under Washington. So Washington made him a lower-level commander, and Daniel Shays fought under Lafayette. Well, Lafayette, at the end of the war, gave out these 5 special swords to soldiers that he thought showed valor and bravery and honor and just went above and beyond the call of duty in the battlefield. He gave out 5 of these, and Daniel Shays was one of the soldiers that got one of these swords. Well, things were so bad for Daniel Shays that he ended up having to sell his sword, and it was one of his most prized possessions. So you could tell how bad it was for these guys. Well, Shays formed an army out of the farmers and trained them. And since it was the courts that were taking the farmers' land away, they decided to force the courts in Massachusetts to close. This way, the judges could not rule to have their farms taken away. So, over the next few months, Shays and his army attacked and closed courts all over Massachusetts. Concord, Worcester, and several other towns. They never did go into Boston. Boston was a big city, but they were causing problems all over Massachusetts. Well, the state government in Massachusetts asked the federal government for help. Well, of course, the federal government couldn't help because they didn't have any money or troops. The Articles of Confederation had made it so the federal government was powerless. So the next thing the governor did was he went to the business community and he talked to the businessmen and he told them what was going on. And he convinced them to get a bunch of rich businessmen together and they would all chip in so they would have enough money to create an army of their own. So they put together a mercenary army of 4,000 men to go take care of Daniel Shays and his rebellion. So once they were formed, on January 20th, 1787, the mercenary army went out in search of Shays and the rebels. Well, when Shays heard about it, he decided that he was going to take his army and raid the federal arsenal in Springfield, Massachusetts. He was going to get some of the war supplies that were in this arsenal, and he thought that would even the odds a little bit. This is a picture of the arsenal. You can see cannon here, and you can see all these guns, gunpowder. Well, in this armory, there were 7,000 guns, some cannon, and 13,000 pounds of gunpowder. So if they would have gotten this stuff, they would have been in good shape to cause a lot of havoc. Well, Shays' plan was that if this raid was successful, he was going to go to Boston and burn it to the ground. So you could tell that he was mad and he was acting out his aggression through this. Well, when they get to Springfield, the 4,000-man mercenary army had not arrived yet. So the Springfield militia came out to stop them. This is a picture of the militia right here. These men right here are Daniel Shays' men. Well, they had some cannon out there, and you'll notice this cannon's pointing kind of up. They fired a warning shot over their heads, but Daniel Shays' army kept coming. And when they got about 100 yards away from them, they blasted right into the crowd. 4 farmers were killed instantly, and 30 more were wounded, so they had 34 total casualties. Well, the group scattered, and the rebellion was basically over after that one shot. They pursued and tracked down and caught about 150 of Shays' men, and they were all sentenced to death. But after the trial, they released all but 12 of them, and those 12 were actually taken to the gallows to be hung. They put the ropes around their necks, and right at the last second, they were given a pardon as well. So nobody was executed for Shays' rebellion. But Shays' rebellion did scare many Americans. They were worried that the government could not control unrest and prevent violence. And a lot of people thought that the Articles of Confederation should be revised or fixed because in times of crisis, the federal government really had no power. So that's the story of Shays' Rebellion, and this is the incident that kind of convinced our founding fathers to create our new Constitution, or the one we use today. So finish up your note taker and your evidence questions, and have a good day. Thanks, kids.